Madam Secretary, first for you. Can you tell us, does this effort suggest a shift in the thrust of the agency's mission from preventing terrorism to preventing the spread of organized crime? And for you, Deputy Secretary, if you could tell us, statements by the Mexican president suggest that Mexico is a bit miffed right now about some of the statements that have been made about Mexico by this administration. Is there a new commitment that Secretary Clinton is taking with her when she goes to Mexico tomorrow? Thank you.
Yes. No. Our department is always engaged in the fight on terrorism. This department was stood up in the wake of 9/11. It is a central tenet of our department, and those efforts are ongoing, and if anything, stronger now than perhaps before. But our department has a very broad mission, and we have to be able to multitask. And as we multitask, one of the things that has happened, one of the changes in the threat environment has been what is going on in Mexico. So we need to make changes in order to deal with that particular threat. And again, it's twofold. One is we want to help our colleagues in Mexico, but it does have an impact on safety and security within the United States. So it's not only consistent with the Department of Homeland Security's mission, but it is one of the ongoing threats to safety and security today. But to return to the beginning of your question, the answer is absolutely not, and we will always be embarked on that fight.
I think the Secretary's trip is part of this broader effort by the administration, really from the beginning, to demonstrate that we really see this as a critical partnership and one that requires as much high-level attention as any bilateral relationship that we have. The President already developed his own ties with President Calderon. The fact that he will be making an early visit himself to Mexico before the Summer of the Americas really represents the importance that we attach to it. And the Secretary, I think, really wants to stress that while we have a critical set of issues that we need to deal with in terms of law enforcement, counter-narcotics, guns and the like, and the violence problem, that we really value Mexico a partner across the board. And the leadership that President Calderon has showed in being courageously taking on this challenge, which is vital to the well-being of his own country, but also across the board in showing leadership in so many different areas. And Mexico is stepping out, not just in the hemisphere, but globally, to play a big role in the G20, showing great leadership on the climate change agenda, one of the first of the recently emerged developing countries to take a major commitment to reduce greenhouse gases. So I think we want to give a very strong signal in her visit. I think we'll emphasize the fact that we really appreciate this remarkable leadership we're seeing from Mexico and the importance of this partnership that we've been building.
Todd. I think a lot of people along the border, particularly in Texas, who are hoping for a large influx in personnel are going to look at the announcements today as pretty modest and incremental. How do you assure those folks who are looking for hundreds or even thousands of troops or border personnel that this is really going to protect Americans in their security?
Well, first of all, it is a very robust movement of personnel. DHS alone, it's 350 specifically dedicated to cartel, in addition to what we already had moved there. So it is a very robust movement. Secondly, empowering state and local law enforcement and helping them with their resources by moving millions and millions of dollars to them along the border is a very robust move. So when I say we're moving $59 million of Stone Garden money, that's money that will immediately become usable by local police departments, sheriff's departments, and the like along the border. And the third is the border itself has a number of assets already located there, thousands actually located along the border. So there's already a very, very heavy federal presence. We add to it, we target, we dedicate, and then, as I said earlier, I anticipate that there will be more announcements as we work with Mexico and work through this drug cartel issue. So if anything, this is really the first wave of things that will be happening. And we're already seeing, I think, some changes along the border. For example, the communities and the border towns themselves, some of them are actually reporting a decrease in violent crime. The issue is obviously, can that be sustained over time, and what needs to happen over time for that to continue. So this is going to be an ongoing piece of very, very significant
Can I
work.
follow up on that? Yes. Can you explain if the $700 million that it's on the factory, it's additional to the Merida Initiative funds already for this year?
That $700 million is the existing appropriations for the Merida Initiative. As you know, we've committed a total of $1.4 billion over 3 years, and so we'll be looking forward to additional funding in the FY210 budget for Merida.
So the 5 helicopters are the helicopters already approved?
Correct. Those are already approved.
The Secretary Gomez-Mont that you saw last week, after the meeting with you, he gave us a press conference to the Mexican media and told us that he found doubts on the U.S. government in terms of sharing intelligence with the Mexicans because the drug corruption in the high levels of government of Mexico. Is that true? Can you explain us why you have doubts on that?
Have doubts, is that what you
Doubts
said?
of giving information, intelligence information to the Mexican authorities because you have the problem in Mexico has the problem of drug corruption at the high levels of the government.
It has been a problem in Mexico, and
You said you have doubts to share information with Mexico.
That's why the meeting with the Minister of the Interior, the Attorney General of Mexico that I've had over the last 2 weeks have been so important, because we need to be able to share information, and we want to share it, and we want to make sure that it doesn't get into the hands of the cartels. Historically, that has been a problem with respect to intelligence sharing in Mexico. I think we all recognize that, but I also think we have in place some tools to deal with that. And one of the initiatives under Merida is to recruit law enforcement personnel in Mexico, and that in and of itself will be an anti-corruption measure.
Ma'am, I have a question here. Mexico has always complained that part of the reason they have this huge drug trafficking problem is because of U.S. consumption of drugs here. So I was wondering if your plan, encompasses some sort of plan to fight against consumption here. And on the other hand, restrictionist groups in the U.S. have said that this is all the more reason why the border wall needs to be completed. Can you tell us what's going on with the completion of the wall along the border?
Yeah.
Thank you.
With respect to demand, yes, that is part and parcel and needs to be. This is a supply issue and it's a demand issue. In the stimulus package, there was approximately $70 million for drug courts, which have been very effective in reducing recidivism among drug offenders. I look forward to working with the new head of the National Drug Control Office to see what else can be done to increase our demand reduction programs. But that obviously has to be a part. In terms of the wall itself, we are going to complete the sections that had already been begun and for which there already were appropriations. To the extent we request any other sections, it will be part and parcel of a system that includes technology and manpower. But if you've ever worked on these cartel cases, as I have as a prosecutor, you know that a wall is not the best way to spend our dollars to prevent these drugs from coming into the United States and to be able to apprehend and prosecute the smugglers themselves.
Madam Secretary, you said that this is all that is taking place right now. So we are to understand that the plans that you detailed previously, that personnel, that new personnel, is already there in place, or they will be moving into their positions?
It's both.
It's both. So
Some have already started. Some are in the process of moving. Obviously, you've got to get agents, and they've got to actually physically move to the border and all the rest. So some of it is underway. Some are already there. For example, I mentioned the screening of rail going southbound along those 8 rail lines. That has already begun. But the additional 100 Border Patrol agents that are only going to focus on southbound interdictions, that's underway. So it's both.
when do you hope to have everything in place?
Well, I think it's going to be ongoing, but the things I've mentioned today are all things that will be completed within, at the longest, 90 days.
Yes, sir.
Madam Secretary, do you already have an assessment of what are the risks if the Mexican government failed in this struggle against drug smugglers?
Yes. I believe that the Mexican government will not fail, and I believe that our role is to assist in this battle because we have our own security interests in its success. But yes, one of the things we do at the department is to plan for even the most remote contingencies. And we have those plans, but even to say it, I think, overestimates the situation.
Can I follow on that?
Yes, Madam Secretary, in the issue of arms, part of the problem, I mean, the question basically is, how success do you expect to be in this effort to clamp down on the trafficking of arms going into Mexico, when part of the problem is, all these gun charms along the border? I mean, do you expect to go against the people who sell these arms, which is part of the problem? I mean, maybe you can be successful in stopping arms, but if you don't do anything to, do something on the source of this illegal business, how can you expect to have a real impact in this issue?
Several things. One is, first of all, you've got to interdict the arms. You've got to stop them from going into Mexico. That's why we're increasing the southbound inspections. That's why we're moving the technology to the border to help with screening going into the border. We're coordinating with Mexico because they can do more by way of southbound screening on their side of the border. But then the Department of Justice moving their agents down there, as David said, and increasing tracing. That will help us identify who is putting those arms into the arms, those guns into the arms of the traffickers moving south. And out of that, there can reasonably be seen more prosecution of actual arms dealers who are intentionally and knowingly putting arms into the hands of the smugglers. So that is part of the reason why the Department of Justice is such an essential part of this initiative on Mexico.
Yes, sir.
Madam Secretary, what are the most compelling arguments you have heard for and against sending National Guard troops to the border? And what does Governor Perry need to tell you to convince you to do what he is asking?
Well, the questions for Governor Perry are very logistical in my view. Why 1,000? Where was that? Where did that number come from? Where in Texas? Texas has a huge border with Mexico. And what does he anticipate the Guard doing? And those are the kinds of things that I think then I will transmit to the Secretary of Defense and the President in the ongoing decision about Guard, yes, no, and if so, how many and where.
Thank you, guys.